Okay, welcome everyone to another deep dive. We're looking at some source material you shared with us today, and, well, it's exploring a perspective that's, honestly, it's pretty challenging. Quite dark, actually. It gives us a look at shame, failure, past wounds. That's just a complete flip from what, most of us think of as healing or growth.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, this isn't your standard self-help playbook. The material you sent over, it's intense, almost reads like a manifesto,
Yeah.
And it's specifically about taking negative experiences and, well, not integrating them, weaponizing them.
Right.
It's definitely going to push some buttons with its ideas about vulnerability and recovery, for sure.
And just to be clear up front, our goal here, our mission, really, is just to dissect this source.
Yeah.
We want to understand its arguments, pull out the core ideas, see the steps it lays out, and just get a handle on the pretty unconventional worldview it's presenting.
Exactly.
We're purely reporting on what's in this material, presenting its ideas neutrally so you can consider them.
Precisely. And the central idea, the really provocative one, is this. Instead of trying to bury or, heal shame and failure, this source says you should actively dig them up, weaponize them. It's not about moving past, it's about using them as leverage, as fuel.
Okay, let's unpack that right from the start. This core concept it brings up, the corpse of ego. What's it getting at when it says our failures, our moments of shame, they aren't really gone, that they're just in shallow graves?
Well, the argument is they're not actually dead, just dormant. And here's where it gets kind of unsettling. It says that like all corpses, they can be puppeteered.
Wow.
The idea is you can't just, outrun it or pretend you're clean from the shame that comes from trying and failing. It's still there, under the surface.
So it's not something you, wash off. It sees shame not as an infection, but foundational.
Exactly. Foundational is a good word. It calls shame infrastructure, or like a scaffold that's built from every time you tried to get better and fell short. According to this viewpoint, you're still dripping with it, no matter how things look on the outside. There's no real clean slate here.
Which leads to the action it demands. If you can't bury it, what do?
The command is pretty stark and active. Excavate, dissect, rewire. In this way of thinking, your shame isn't a weakness you hide. It's explicitly your leverage.
Leverage, okay. And it does the same thing with guilt, right? Calling it currency.
But with a catch. Only if you know how to counterfeit remorse.
So that's like a specific skill you need within this system.
It is. It frames guilt not as, a moral compass, but as a resource, something to be manipulated. And failure, that's not something to avoid, it's a stage, if you learn how to script the aftermath.
It's all about control then, presentation, even over these really deep negative experiences.
Totally. It's a deliberate inversion, like you said. You don't heal, you don't move on from the past, you reanimate it.
You force it to kneel. Yeah, it really challenges that whole idea of healing and asks, when did you start pretending your wounds were gone?
Right. And the scar, in this view, it's not a symbol of survival, it's a map.
A map? Back to the moment you broke.
Exactly. And the point of going back to that moment, the source is really insistent on this. It's not healing.
Right.
It's not to heal it, but to own it. It's about taking possession of that pain. And the language it uses is just incredibly powerful. Wear your failure like a crown made of barbed wire.
A crown made of barbed wire.
Wow.
And the sign that this whole thing is working, the outcome.
Is that every time someone doubts you, you smile? Why? Because the corpse is dancing again.
Yeah, that's a chilling picture. Turning your internal pain into this kind of external power or performance.
It fundamentally redefines what personal failure and shame even mean. Turns them from liabilities into potential assets, but within this very specific, very dark system.
And it's not just theoretical. The source actually lays out steps, right?
Yeah.
A process it calls the dissection or the autopsy of shame.
Yeah, step one is what it calls the mortician's protocol. And this part dismisses a really common idea. Learning from failure. It just states flat out, failure has no wisdom, it has no virtue.
Whoa. So it argues people who say they learn from failure, they're not actually gaining wisdom.
Nope. It says they're just mutilating and experimenting, and it uses some pretty extreme examples to back this up.
Like the Edison one?
Yeah, like Edison. The source claims he didn't just, fail thousands of times with the light bulb. Instead, it frames it as he practiced ritual electrocution until his humiliation literally became the electricity he harnessed.
That's intense.
Or Steve Jobs getting kicked out of Apple. The text says that wasn't a time of growth or healing. According to this, he just sharpened his fangs, came back purely to slit the throat of everyone who ever doubted him.
Using his engineered shame as a serum.
Serum, yeah, injected into the world.
Okay, so the takeaway here is that these figures, in this view, didn't passively learn. They actively engineered their negative experiences into, like, a weapon.
Right.
Or a tool for dominance.
Exactly. That intensity leads right into the next step, the embalming process. What's the first bit of that?
Exposure. It said you have to let your failures rot in the open air, no hiding.
Mm-hmm. And right alongside that is the autopsy protocol, which means meticulously writing down every single humiliation, the teacher who laughed, the lover who left, the audience that stopped clapping.
And the source makes a real point of saying, this is not therapy, this is evidence. Why is that distinction so important here?
Because the goal isn't emotional processing. It's not healing. It's about gathering data points, facts about your vulnerability.
To turn them into ammunition later.
Precisely. This evidence isn't for self-compassion. It's for the next phase.
Which it calls stuffing the body. Tell us about that one.
Okay, so this is where the transformation happens. You take that empty space left by failure, and you pack it with spite. You sew its throat shut with narcissism. You wire its limbs with cold vengeance. The explicit goal isn't to move on, it's to animate it. Give it this twisted but powerful new form.
The source even suggests, like, writing down a moment that really branded you, burning the paper, and then resurrecting it.
Yeah, but not to release it. To give it teeth, give it a script, make it say what you couldn't. It's all about seizing control of that narrative.
Right. Taking back the power in that moment.
And it adds this really stark detail here. It says, you hesitated. That hesitation, that's the knife. It's already in your hand.
Implying the capacity for this kind of dark control was always there.
Yeah, exactly. That you just needed to pick up the knife, so to speak.
This turning internal pain outward, it seems to connect straight into the third step, the puppeteer's sutures. This bit focuses on enemies, right? The people who mocked you. It claims they've already rewritten your script.
And it points to examples of how public figures might manipulate perception after a fall from grace. You know, the disgraced guy framed as a sacrifice, the liar suddenly positioned as a martyr, the condemned reframed as misunderstood prophets.
But the source just dismisses that as choreography.
Totally. It explicitly says this is not honesty, it's performance.
And the technique it actually proposes is to stitch their mockery, their words, right into your own public performance, like timing their laughter so perfectly that it becomes your applause.
It's about completely controlling the narrative around your past suffering. You integrate the very things meant to bring you down and you flip them.
So at the end of this whole dissection part, the aim isn't redemption in any normal sense.
Not at all. It's about digging up weaknesses, yeah, but not to heal them. It's to resurrect them into something new, something potent. The source frames the entire process pretty bluntly as revenge, not redemption.
Okay, so from this really intense dissection process, we move into the final act, according to the source, the rebirth, which it labels the theater of the damned. And this sounds like it's all about performance, exploiting this reanimated shame.
Exactly. Step one here is called the first performance. And the source starts with this really cynical observation. Suffering is lucrative.
Lucrative, wow.
Yeah, but there's a big condition. Only if you're already dead or willing to pretend you are.
Okay, what does that look like in practice? It gives examples, right?
It does. Like the artist who dies forgotten, then suddenly becomes this celebrated genius, right? Their past struggles are totally rebranded as visionary. Or The Addict's Confession. Packaged up, sold as a best-selling memoir.
Or a public breakdown being spun into relatable content. We see that online sometimes.
Right. The source argues that the audience, the world, they don't actually want quiet personal healing. They want pain with subtitles.
Pain with subtitles.
Yeah. Or shame gift wrapped in hashtags. They want to watch your metaphorical death, your public failure, your humiliation, and then they'll cheer for a profitable resurrection.
So the instruction is just stark. Give them what they crave. Market your misery. Sell them the tragedy they can't stop watching.
Exactly. But the key, the source really stresses this, is never let them see the wires. The manipulation has to be invisible. It has to look authentic.
This public exploitation then leads into step 2, the eternal tour.
And the source makes this provocative claim. Everyone plays this game.
Everyone. And it points to examples again.
It does, like the influencer crying into their phone camera, right? Building this whole empire on what looks like vulnerability, but it's carefully curated.
Or the CEO who turns a massive bankruptcy into this triumphant TED Talk about resilience.
Yeah, or even a cult leader weaving their past betrayals or humiliations into some kind of prophecy, making it part of the doctrine.
So the shared trick, according to this text, is simple.
Don't erase your past, exploit it, your suffering. That becomes your brand.
Shame is the product. Failures are limited edition.
It's commodifying your own pain.
And it uses that incredibly dark metaphor here, just to hammer the point home.
Oh, yeah. Sell tickets to your humiliation, charge extra for the gallows, let them cheer as you hang.
And then smile as you sell them the rope.
Yeah.
It's just total control over your own suffering narrative, profiting from the very thing meant to destroy you.
Which all builds up to step 3, the final bow.
Mm-hmm.
And the source concludes this whole journey by saying, look, you weren't actually weak before, you were just untrained in how to handle things this way, according to this philosophy.
And the final transformation it describes, you're not the puppet anymore, dancing on shamed strings. You're not even just the puppeteer pulling them.
No, you become the director
Yeah.
of the whole spectacle.
You snap the strings, let the shame marionette collapse,
Right.
because its bones will form your throne. That's the image.
Yeah, and the ultimate goal here, laid out right in the source, it's not redemption. Redemption, it says, is for beggars.
You're not forgiven. In this system, you're feared.
Right, you haven't just come back from hardship, you have risen.
And the final, really chilling image that ends this whole thing is just curtain call.
So, yeah, this deep dive really forced us to grapple with a profoundly dark and challenging philosophy in this source material. It's a complete inversion, really, of how we usually think about dealing with shame, failure, focusing totally on cynical exploitation, leveraging pain for dominance instead of healing or redemption.
And again, just to be absolutely clear with everyone listening, our role here was strictly to explore and present the specific ideas in this one source. We've laid out its perspective just as it's written, as neutrally as we can for you to understand and, think about.
Yeah, and thinking about this framework, especially that last part, the performance and exploitation, it really raises a tough question, doesn't it? Something for you to maybe mull over. If shame and suffering can be weaponized like this, marketed for dominance, for profit, how do we, as people navigating the world, tell the difference?
Between genuine vulnerability.
Right, between real vulnerability and a performance that's just calculated, designed purely for leverage. It's a difficult thing to think about.
Yeah.